Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. All right, welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It's Thursday, June 6th. This is episode 107. I think I've set a record for the amount of papers I have in front of me, which is impressive. Chuck McKittick, Matt Roy here. Chuck, how are you today?
It's great to be with you on episode 107.
107, and just as we start, remember to download, rate, review, subscribe to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast on YouTube and on any podcast app. Today is D-Day as well. I want to get this in early. Today is the 80th anniversary of the invasion of Normandy.
I did not know that.
You didn't?
No, I did not. That's the first I've heard of that.
Okay, so today
educated.
is the 80th anniversary of the invasion of Normandy, the biggest amphibious invasion in modern warfare history. So thank you to everybody who had troops there, who had family members there. I think over 10,300 Allied troops died that day. So tip of the hat to all of them, and obviously always in our thoughts and prayers as the military city USA that we are here. So
amen.
Got a lot to talk about today. I did wake up and something weird happened this morning. So I went to sleep, and I'm weird. I have a glass of milk before I go to bed every day, and I had it in a Broncos cup. My wife was very nice, and she brought me a cup of coffee this morning, and I had that in a Broncos mug. And so on my nightstand, I had two Broncos drinking vessels. And I was like, and it just made me realize, like, man, I want football season to be here so bad already.
See, and I'm at the point in my life where I enjoy this time of year. I like OTAs and minicamp. I like to see how the baby is made, so to speak, right? I mean, so I like this time of year. It is, I know. This is the best time of year. I think I enjoy this part and training camp more than I enjoy the actual games at this point.
Certain websites in Texas where you see babies being made are banned in Texas, so
yes.
We're not going to.
I meant that metaphorically.
Sausage
yes.
being made.
Yes, that's right.
I like this part too, but it's like after this week when OTAs are done and you have to wait until training camp, that's just the worst time of year because you don't hear from the NFL basically at all for the next month and a half, except for if something bad happens, and you don't want to see headlines about the NFL because you know that those headlines are going to be someone had a DUI or someone had XYZ, and you just don't want to see
But
that.
see, if you've been doing this a while, you make the time from end of mini camp to the start of training camp worth your while. So I think I've got like 10 interviews in the bag that I'm going to be sprinkling in between now and the end of training camp. So
yeah, tune in.
There will always be football, Matthew. There will always be football.
You sound like Roger Goodell. So we got a lot going on today. So Chuck was up at minicamps this week. We're going to get into it with him about his main takeaways. Going to have him empty the proverbial notebook. We're going to pick up the NBA draft in 3 weeks. Who the Spurs going to pick to join Victor Wembanyama with their fourth and eighth picks, NBA Finals starting tonight. Who are we going to see winning that? Dallas and Boston going to start their series up in Boston. And then we're also going to talk about Caitlin Clark. So there was obviously a big controversy this past weekend on Saturday. Caitlin Clark has set the WNBA on fire. A lot of veterans in the league not liking it too much. So we'll talk about that controversy that literally everybody in the sports media landscape has an opinion on right now. So we'll play a couple of people who are more educated in that, Michael Wilbon, Gino Auriemma as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Meantime, number game, we start with 107. Obviously, I just mentioned I'm a big Bronco fan, so you know who I think of. I think of John Elway every single time, twice on Sunday, whenever I think of number 7. It's number 7 is only one thing for me. It's John Elway.
Okay, but you got some good ones on the list. For me, right up off the top, Mickey Mantle, of course, and then Michael Vick. I don't know why. When I think of 7 instantly, if I'm being honest, I don't know why Michael Vick would pop into my mind probably even before Mickey Mantle at this point.
Really?
Maybe just because I saw Michael Vick play. I never saw Mickey Mantle play that I remember.
I mean, Mickey Mantle, there's a lot of good ones. John Elway, Cristiano Ronaldo is number 7 as well. And I think when you think of great number 7s, there's 3 of them. There's Cristiano Ronaldo, there's John Elway, there's Mickey Mantle.
Well, first of all, you said Ronaldo's first name, which was obviously that's news to me as well. The fact that he wore number 7, also news to me.
Yes. He's won 7 everywhere he's been. Manchester United, Juventus, who was he with forever? Real Madrid. Thank you. He's been with them forever. He's arguably the best player of all time. I mean, Pele.
But I don't even remember what number Pele wore. Do you? Was it 10? Pele, what number would Pele wear?
Don't ask Luis. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm looking for anybody to ask because I don't know.
I actually don't remember what the number Pele wore. 10 sounds right. I see Luis looking it up over there.
Yeah, don't hold me to it. Okay, let's move along.
I'm curious now. What is it? 10? Okay.
Is it? Oh, okay.
It is 10.
Wow.
Look at you. So him, Messi, but you think of 7, you think, Ronaldo. I think John Elway, just because John Elway is arguably the most talented quarterback to ever come into the league. I mean, I think he was the picture perfect prototype for a quarterback, and you saw him play more than I did.
I did.
But that's kind of his claim to fame, is he was the number 1 pick. He was the very clear-cut number 1 pick in the 83 draft with 5 other quarterbacks alongside of him, Dan Marino obviously being in that draft as well, Jim Kelly in that draft, Todd Blackledge. But he was the presumptive and clear-cut number 1 pick because of the body type, because of the arm talent, because of all those things. And I think he lived up to form.
What I was shocked at, Matthew, was I did a story on him during the preseason after he had already done some great things, and how accommodating he was, and also how close to my size he was. That's what
Really?
blew me. I couldn't believe it. What blew me away, I should say. It just, arm talent, brain, the fact that, there was a little bit of mysticism around him because he was such a great baseball player too. But yeah, and then rightfully, for the guy that was tagged for his whole career, could never win the big one, and then won a couple of big ones late.
Yeah, I've told the story before. I met John Owen when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and the nicest guy ever. And the thing is, apparently the reputation is that he's not the nicest guy ever to a lot of his fans and stuff. But to me that day, he was a hero. To me, he's always going to be the Bronco that I think of, besides like Champ Bailey and stuff like that. So John Elway, I'll always hat tip to him. In 2007, the Colts beat the Bears as 7-point favorites. I always think of that as a non-Colts play. I always think of the Devin Hester opening kickoff taken back. I know exactly where I was when I saw that game too. 29-17, Peyton Manning, the MVP. Prince was the halftime show of that one, which was also impressive.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That was a great show.
Oh yeah.
2007, the Patriots also went 18-0. Obviously, they lost the Super Bowl in 2008, technically, but that was the 2007 18-0 Patriots going for 19-0, David Tyree catch, all that stuff.
Yep, I was at that one.
Were you?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
It's a good one to be at.
Basketball. I just got the update. Cowboys canceled their on-field work today. We'll get to that in a little bit. Basketball, the Spurs swept the Cavs. I think of that as the easiest of the Spurs finals wins. Like, that Cavs team had no business being in the finals.
You could make the argument that Spurs team had no business being in the finals too.
Is that so?
Yeah, absolutely. Things worked out. I believe Dallas, who was the 1 seed, got knocked out, I think, in the first round.
Yeah, wasn't that the year that they got knocked out by the Baron Davis?
Yes, I think so. My memory is fleeting.
But that was the year after they lost to the Heat in the finals, and then they came back as the 1 seed, lost in the first round.
But I think once that happened, it was like, okay, here we go again. I just remember having to cancel another vacation. That was one of those, you could plan all you wanted. You could think, well, the Spurs aren't going to do it this year. Or like even late in the year, you go, well, they're not going to get past Dallas. Then Dallas loses in the first round. Instantly, everybody starts canceling their vacations because here we go again.
I mean, I think next time that happens, we'll be happy that you have to cancel.
Yes,
vacations.
I think so too. Especially, again, we've been spoiled. So if it happens again, it literally would be like lightning striking twice.
Yeah, that would be that. So that was their 4th championship in 8 years. Like I said, I think that was the easiest one, just because you had the Zildrunas, Ilgauskas, LeBron James, Boobie Gibson, Cavs, and you're like, who the hell are these people? And so that Cavs. LeBron basically willed that Cavs team to go to the finals.
Yeah, and Tony Parker basically willed that team too. Tony was the best player on the Spurs that year during that playoff run.
And then I believe it was August 7th in baseball, Barry Bonds passed Hank Aaron as the all-time home run king, 756th home run, August 7th of 2007. I don't want to devolve into too far into this conversation, but do you think, when you think home run king, do you think Barry Bonds or do you think Hank Aaron?
I think of Barry Bonds.
Because of the number?
Yeah, just because of the number. Because it's not that I don't think of Hank too, because my whole life until Barry Bonds, it was Hank. So, it's different eras, and obviously you can spitball and hypothesize, or even probably have some intel as to what was happening with Barry Bonds at the time. But at the end of the day, you still got to go do it. And I can assure you, whatever Barry Bonds has been accused of doing, and even if he did it, I can assure you he was not the only one doing it at the time.
The crappy thing with Barry, and that I always think about, is like he didn't need it. Like maybe he needed it to be the home run king,
Yeah.
but he was already a Hall of Famer before anything got injected into his arm.
And I've said this before too, and I'll wrap this up quickly. It's if we're basing, whether a guy gets into the Hall of Fame, whether or not a player has been vetted or not for something they may or may not have done, then it's not fair to Bonds and Clemens and some of these other guys, when I can also assure you there are other guys who did similar things that are already in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And then the World Series that year, the Red Sox swept the Rockies. Very easy sweep for them. That was not a competitive series whatsoever. I think that was
a lot of runs scored.
That was the Josh Beckett Red Sox team.
The
Josh
juice
Beckett.
Ball era too.
Yeah, exactly. They killed the Rockies.
Yeah, good old Josh getting another ring out of that too, and well earned.
Absolutely. Let's get to the NBA. So a couple of mock drafts coming out this past week. ESPN's mock draft has the Spurs taking Stephon Castle, the UConn product, at number 4, and Tidjane Saloon. I'm not going to be able to pronounce that name until draft day. I'm sorry. It's the French power forward at number 8. CBS has them taking Nikola Topic at 4, and then the Providence guard Devin Carter at 8. There's a lot you're going to see. I feel like people who don't pay attention to the draft that much, especially this year, usually there's like a number 1 pick and maybe a top 3, and then a bunch of people maybe you hadn't heard of, or maybe like different selections. This year, every mock draft you see is going to be different. They're going to have a different player at 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe Alex Sarr is going to be number 1 now, but you're going to see different players in the top 10. This is a perfect example of that. There are 2 picks, 4 different players. Who do the Spurs like? That's a great freaking question, because they're never going to tell us, and we're not going to find out until that night. They can like Reed Shepherd, they could like Rob Dillingham, they could like Stephon Castle, they could like Klingon, they can like any of these guys, and we're never going to find out until the pick is suggested on number 8.
I think, at least for me personally, things have changed over time, and the last 5 or 6 years at least, the NBA treats this kind of information if you talk to scouts, or, if you used to be able to talk to scouts or front office people off to the side, they'd kind of give you the lay of the land of what things were looking like. But the NBA now treats this as proprietary information, and only their business partners, their broadcast partners, are going to be or have access to this type of information. You can still talk to baseball scouts, baseball front office people behind the scenes about where they think things are going to go in a draft. Same thing with the NFL. You can still talk to agents. You can still talk to scouts, and there's a little more of a feel. So based on what I just said, like, I don't have any problem going into an NFL draft saying where I think, a certain guy's going to go, especially locally, if I've talked to some people, because these people know, and they know because they're talking with other people too. And so you're formulating your opinion based on opinions of people that are going to be pulling the levers on these things. I personally don't have any contact right now with anybody that's looking at this draft, so I wouldn't even feel comfortable spitballing with who's going to go where and who's going to do what, or any of that stuff.
Well, and there's such varying opinions on these guys too. I mean, one team loves Reed Shepherd, one team hates Reed Shepherd. One team loves Bronny James, one team hates Bronny James. You're never going to get a consensus with this draft. So I feel better about looking at this draft like, okay, what are the needs of the team? And so with the Spurs, they have 2 very clear needs that I think we have seen all year. They need somebody who can pass the ball to Victor, and they need someone who can catch a ball on the outside from Victor and shoot it and actually make the shot.
And they need some dogs. Like, you need more dogs, right? You need guys that are just JYDs, junkyard dogs, like Mario Ellie, guys that are happy for the opportunity, happy to show that they can not only play, but they're going to go out and defend somebody super hard, night in and night out, give maximum effort. That's what this team needs more of too.
I do feel comfortable also saying people that I personally want on this team. I want Reed Shepherd on this team. He can shoot the lights out, he can play good defense, and he can facilitate. There's 3 things that this team needs. Those are 3 things that he does really well. Stephon Castle, another guy. He's a UConn guy. Didn't get as much run as he probably would have on a worse team. But obviously, UConn was the best team in the country all year long. Danny Hurley, possibly now going to the Lakers as well. He was one of the best players on that team. And in the NBA, if he plays point guard, he can shoot, play defense, and pass the ball as well. So those are 2 guys that I would really like to see on this team.
And I've heard a lot of people talking about now all of a sudden that this is the worst draft in years.
Yeah, that's BS.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know what to believe. I'm not getting any intel anywhere, so I'll just see what they pick, and I'm sure we'll be just fine with it.
I'll tell you who I don't want is Nikola Topic, just because of the knee injury. He already tore his ACL this past this past Europe season. So never a fan of drafting injured guys, because you never know what's going to happen at the next level as well. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you as well, the NBA for the first time ever is going to have a 2-day draft. They're going to have first round, second round, aired in 2 days. Do you think, first of all, what do you think of that? And second of all, do you think that's because Bronny James is going to be drafted day 2, most likely?
Oh, well, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe.
That's
fair.
That's my theory, is that they're basically making this a 2-day thing. They want to test the success of it, because obviously the NFL has had unmitigated success, unparalleled success in a 3-day draft. And by moving it around to different cities and all that stuff, one of the genius moves from the NFL. The NBA now still doing it in Brooklyn, doing it 2 nights. But I really think that they're doing that because of the Bronny factor.
If you're spitballing, I could be down with that.
I think that's obviously it's my opinion, so I think it's smart, but but I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, there's only a certain few teams that are interested in Bronny James, or that Bronny is even interested in going to. I think he only accepted invitations from 2 teams out of 10. And it's like, why else would they do it besides trying to test if it's good? I mean, if it works, if you're going to get viewership, ESPN would be stupid not to air it on that second day. But what I don't get is, like, the second round of the NBA draft is not like the second round in the NFL draft.
No, because contracts aren't guguaranteed, right? I don't know if that's still the case.
Contracts are guaranteed in the NBA.
Not in the second round, though.
Oh, right.
No.
Right.
So, at least unless they've changed it, and again, maybe they have. I really haven't paying that much attention to it, but I think maybe too, it could be a chance to celebrate first round guys a little more than they do, because once they get going, it's pretty rapid fire. But again, I think if you're an NBA fan and you have a team that has a pretty high draft pick, you're probably going to tune in. And then if this is one of those sports that maybe you're a fan of the team, but you'll be perfectly fine at looking at X later in the night to see who got what. But I can see a reason for stretching it out, especially this time of year where there's really not a lot on TV anyway, sports related.
I get that for sure. And that'll be after the Stanley Cup. That'll be after the NBA Finals. Yeah. Like, there's not a lot on TV, so I could see them grasping at viewership late in June. Let's talk about the NBA Finals real quick. So NBA Finals starting tonight. Celtics, Mavs. The Mavs have probably, I would say this is a stretch, they have 2 of the best 3 players in the series, I think. 4th one would be Jaylen Brown, but I think Luka's the best player in the series. I think Jason Tatum's the second best. You could make an argument Kyrie Irving is the second best. You could make a very strong argument that the Mavs have the 2 best players on the either roster, but then you could make another argument that the Celtics have the next 6. How do you see the series, and how do you see the matchups and all that stuff?
I don't know. I said at the beginning of all the playoffs, ABD, anybody but Dallas. Normally my default is, like, if it's a Texas team, right? Oh, you're pulling for the Texas team. But there's just something about the logo that, and all those bitter rivalries with the Spurs through the years, through the decades. Anybody but Dallas, of course they're in the finals. So you may as well run to Vegas right now and bet on the Mavericks. But it looks like
a lot of people have.
Yeah. The hot streak that they're on in terms of who they've had to beat to get here, where they've come seeding wise to get here. The fact that, I don't know, you could say no, everything's setting up for Boston. It's just, I don't like the fact that I said at the beginning of all this, anybody but Dallas, and here they are in the finals. So.
Well, here's the thing for me. It's like, I think if Dallas loses a close series, let's say it's 4-2 and the Celtics win, I think it's still a successful season for Dallas. If the Celtics don't win the finals, it's a failure of a season for the Celtics, just because they've had the easiest path to get there. Everybody in the East got hurt. Donovan Mitchell got hurt. Jimmy Butler got hurt. Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. Even though Kristaps went down, it's not like you lost Jason Tatum. It's like every single thing has broken their way. Yes, they have been a dominant team throughout the entire regular season. They've been dominant throughout the postseason, albeit with the injuries to their opponents. I think if they don't win a championship with this team in this layout against this team, it's a failure of a season, and I have no problem with saying that, and I'll say it to the end.
Yeah, we talked about this, I think, a few weeks ago, and I think you're right. From where they've come from, and basically because the hard work was done years ago, building the roster and assembling all that, how they've evolved, I would think that losing at this level is going to feel like a failure, not only for that team, but for that fan base too, on a lot of levels.
So do you think, I know you said anybody but Dallas should, and the Celtics have Derek White, who's a former Spurs. Should Spurs fans root for Dallas because, well,
I wouldn't.
Texas, or should they root for the Celtics?
So if I'm a Spurs fan, there's just no way I could put my feelings aside for the rivalry. And it's kind of like, would A&M fans be pulling for Texas in a national championship setting just because it's Texas? I don't think so. And vice versa. I don't think Texas fans would be pulling for A&M. Like, you think Texas fans are going to be pulling for A&M if they get to the College World Series? I don't think so. So that's where I'm going. I'm allowing my hate to take precedence here.
I'm rooting for,
and I have no reason to hate these guys.
Right?
How can you not like Kyrie? How can you not like
Luka?
Some of these guys? Yeah, Luka. The rest of these guys on the roster. I mean, there's no reason for me to hate them other than the logo.
I did a monologue,
but that's enough.
A couple of weeks ago on Bryson DeChambeau and how he's reinvented his image. I think Kyrie Irving's reinvention of his own image has been like bordering on heroic, the way he's done it. Like during COVID, he was at his all-time low. He wasn't getting a vaccine. He wasn't doing all these things. He was, I mean, and
yeah, that's right.
Not to say anything about vaccines,
right? But how he was treated through all
of it, yeah. And through how people were saying he was riding Kevin Durant's coattails, and the way that he left Boston was bad, and just all those things piled up to where you thought that Kyrie was the problem. To where the point last year when the Mavs traded for Kyrie, everyone was like, "Oh, this isn't going to work," and then it was a disastrous failure in the first season. The way that he's come back this year and treated everything and been had some humility and been humble, I think that his reinvention of his own image has been spectacular, to the point where I think some of this stuff is I think people are actually rooting for Kyrie, which is something that we aren't really accustomed to.
Yeah.
I do want to get to the Caitlin Clark stuff real quick. If you haven't seen it, the Caitlin Clark debacle controversy, we're playing the video for you right now. This is basically what happened. I'll just lay it out really quickly. Player named Kennedy Carter, who spells it Chenn. So that's odd in and of itself. But she commits a flagrant foul on Caitlin Clark. This happened on Saturday. It's the latest of the hard fouls that have been against the rookie fever player. Now you have everyone, literally everyone in sports, basically coming out with their own hot takes. Before we get to our opinions on this, before we get to our conversation, I want to hear from people who are more educated in this, because I think it's fair, and I think everyone needs to say, we aren't experts in this. We aren't experts in women's basketball because, frankly, it hadn't been talked about that much prior to this, and it wasn't in the zeitgeist. It wasn't openly spoken about. It wasn't very popular. So I would like to hear from another couple of people first before we get into our opinions on it. And so Gino Auriemma, one of the best coaches ever in women's basketball and women's college sports, he said yesterday that Clark was being targeted. Let's hear from him real quick on the Dan Patrick show this morning.
If you're a college player and you're a great college player, like Caitlin was, the delusional fan base that follows her disrespected the WNBA players by saying she's going to go in that league and tear it apart. There were actually odds on she's third or fourth in betting odds on being MVP of the WNBA. These people are so disrespectful and so unknowledgeable and so stupid that it gives women's basketball a bad name. Okay, so the kid was set up for failure right from the beginning. So if you're a WNBA player, and believe me, I've coached the best, and I've pissed them off a lot, and they let me know about it. But they were tremendously disrespected. And none of them are going to say it. But human nature is, okay, this kid's coming into the league. And Diana said it best. This kid's in for a rude awakening. And they all jumped over her, but they didn't read the whole thing that she said. But nobody's printing. Diana Taurasi was right. This kid's on the wrong team. She's got the wrong skill set to handle the physicality of that league. And she's a rookie. And if you're a WNBA player, if you're any kind of player, you're going to say, I'm going to make a statement. Targeted by society, targeted by her looks, targeted by her reputation, targeted by the disrespect that they've shown to the WNBA. There's a huge target on this kid's back.
All right, a lot to react to there, but before we get to that, Michael Wilbon, Tony Kornheiser also had a really good conversation about this. And this takes it in a slightly different direction because there is a lot of racially charged arguments being out there because Caitlin Clark is white in a predominantly black players league. So Michael Wilbon kind of touches on that. Let's hear from him real quick from Pardon the Interruption.
The discussion about Caitlin Clark has to deal with, and I mean initially and loudly, race and culture in America. That's part of this. And basketball is the place, Tony, where it's more often discussed historically. Yes, it started maybe with Jackie Robinson and with certain prize fighters, Jack Johnson, but it's been a basketball discussion. When it was about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and the sort of enemies they were before they became deep and abiding their friendship. But I remember with Spike Lee, an important part of his movie making dealt with Bird and dealt with a white star basketball player in America, because there ain't one on the male side. It's Caitlin Clark. And it's okay for people to admit that they identify with, so I identify with people, maybe part of why I identify with Edmonton or people like Evander Kane and Darnell Nurse, who are people of color. And so it's okay to identify that. You're not going to find that white American star in men's basketball. Caitlin Clark is that. And she brings people into the tent because she's great and she's unique. In this case, she's white in a sport of black people. That's part of the deal.
Here's where I'm at. And I don't want to I say this knowing that I am a straight white male in America.
Yeah, you don't have to tell anybody.
I mean, like we
right
can
on
like,
camera.
Like,
I mean, that's
and I just want to say it first because sometimes things get misconstrued. So I'm just going to be as clear as I possibly can. I don't think I am in a position as a white male in America to say that this is a race thing because I have no idea.
I don't either.
It could be. It totally could be. Wilbon could be correct. Stephen A could be correct. Monica McNutt could be correct. The people who are out there saying that it is racially charged because it's a white superstar. Pat McAfee went on and said white bleep the other day. She is a superstar in the WNBA, or she is a superstar in college that is not a superstar right now in the WNBA. She's only a superstar in name only right now in the WNBA because, frankly, she hasn't been very good so far in the WNBA. And she just happens to be white. So I'm going to leave the race part out of it. I think what needs to be said is there is no problem with being physical in a game. I think Gino had a good point saying that, Diana Taurasi came in here and said, we're not going to play pussyfoot with her. Guess what? Diana Taurasi's white, by the way.
We said that on this show before she even got to the league, that this was going to happen. I don't know why this is so astonishing that when you're talking about a great college player going to a league of professionals who are also great, that's why they're professionals, that this was going to happen, right? I mean, there's case closed.
There's nothing wrong with being physical. I mean, the Kennedy thing was, I think, a one-off. Kennedy Carter, that was a cheap shot. Bill Laimbeer in the 80s, there's a lot of other crap that was worse than that.
There's been historical, references to guys that were hot shots at the college ranks that go in and a bunch of dogs are going to get on them and treat them like, they're alpha dogs trying to let them know that, hey, we know where you're coming from, but in order to get to the next level, you're going to have to go through us first.
Yeah, and I think it's multi-layered here, right? Like Caitlin Clark is the biggest star in women's sports in maybe ever. Like, especially in the day that we live in right now. She is the biggest star that the women's basketball has seen in at least a very long time, but probably ever. She is the most prolific scorer ever. She is one of the most fantastic basketball players that anyone has seen on any level. The hype train has let her down. I think Gino's right on the hype train. And that's not, I don't know if that's her fans so much. I think that was a little off from him, the disrespectful from fans.
I do too, because when he threw fans out there, it's like, what is he talking about? Talk about the Dan Patricks of the world that made this a thing.
And
I mean, so to blame now Caitlin Clark's fan base for the fact that she's getting cheap shotted in the WNBA. I mean, that's absolutely, I mean, that's a little disingenuous.
I
so
think it's a little bit
to hyperbole.
It's a little bit our fault. Like, people who built this up to say Caitlin Clark is going to run into the WNBA and she's going
I'm not on that.
I'm not saying us particularly, but people like us who have podcasts, who have mics in front of their faces and decided to anoint Caitlin Clark the best player in the WNBA has ever seen before she even stepped foot on the court. A lot of things have been feeding into this narrative that Caitlin Clark is going to be this superstar right away. There's a lot of things that have gone against her, though, and there's a reason that there's a target on her back, because players are jealous of her. Players are jealous of the amount of endorsements that she has. People are jealous that she has all this attention, and that with this attention came so much more attention on the league. Why didn't that happen when Candace Parker, Diana Taurasi, Leslie, why am I forgetting her name? Lisa Leslie. Thank you. Lisa Leslie was in the league. Why didn't this happen with Breanna Stewart? Why didn't this happen with all these other players? I don't know. I frankly don't know. But what I know now is that Caitlin Clark and her stardom has brought so much attention to a league that was previously, honestly, forgettable. We sometimes forgot. I didn't even know when the WNBA season took place before Caitlin Clark got into the league. I will be completely honest with you, because there's all these breaks and I really didn't know. And honestly, I didn't care to know. And so many other people in media didn't care to know either. So many other people around the world didn't care to know. And now you have this superstar that has brought attention to your league, that has chartered flights for you, that has sold out the arenas in Indiana more times than not. And it's okay to be jealous. It's okay to admit that you're a little jealous. But what's not okay is to target her on the court.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
I think that is what's happening a little bit, but I don't think that. I just don't think that people feel it's okay to say, yeah, I'm jealous of what she has and what she has brought to us, but I'm also thankful for what she has brought to us, because this league is going to explode. Salaries are going to explode because of Caitlin Clark, and it's okay to say that.
Yeah, I think, just like from from the men's side, and although I think, the two examples I'm going to use, those players enjoyed a little more success early on in their professional careers. But, Michael Jordan got knocked into the third row of stands when he was the young buck trying to assert himself. Tiger Woods, the jealousy on the PGA Tour when that guy was blowing up. And
Yeah.
I remember David Ogren, our very own, getting on the Tiger bandwagon very early on and trying to let people know it's like, or other golfers, like, it's okay that he's doing this. There are more eyes on us, which mean the purses are going to get bigger. We're all going to benefit by having this transcendent figure kind of running our sport. There's going to be more money or more opportunity for all of us to then go out and make more money. So I think, at some point you would think if the WNBA and, whoever's running the league, their commissioner, has got to put their foot down. Wayne Gretzky's another example. At a certain point, everybody in the NHL knew not to go freaking cheap shot Gretzky and take him out for any reason, because, yeah, he's on a really good team, but this is the reason why our sport is becoming more of a, less of a regional sport and more of a global sport because of this one guy. So, it's kind of hard to separate sometimes competition from the business side of it. But, I think with the Caitlin Clark thing, the reason why it didn't happen before is there wasn't a machine behind it before.
Yeah.
You could take what was happening organically and then put it on steroids with all the media attention and then social media and everything else, because the social media is going to take its cues too from the amount of coverage that ESPN's giving. And again, that happened organically. They were just getting on the bandwagon, but when you put that spotlight on it, of course Caitlin Clark's going to be a star when everybody was talking about her for every time you mention women's sports and women's basketball in particular, what were they talking about? They weren't talking about the WNBA. They were talking about her.
Yeah, and
don't blame the fans, Gino Ariama.
And you hear people like Angel Reese, who was part of those most watched games.
Yeah.
Guess what? And she said, and I fragmented my sentence there. You hear her say, like, in 20 years, they're going to remember me too.
Right.
And they're going to remember what we built in the NBA. They're going to remember what I did in the WNBA. Guess what? The numbers in those championship games and the games that you played against Iowa weren't big because of you. They were big because of Caitlin Clark. Maybe they were big a little bit because of the controversy and the this that you had to do in Caitlin Clark's face. They weren't big because of her. If Caitlin Clark wasn't in those games, guess what? You wouldn't have had those numbers. And so to see people like that say, it's clearly jealousy. It's clearly you're jealous of what she has and that you don't. And Angel Reese has been taken through the ringer, and I give her so much respect and admiration for what she has dealt with as a young woman in America and a young star in America. But like, you can just say it. You can just say it with your chest. You're jealous of Caitlin Clark. That's fine. You know what I mean? Like it's just
right.
It's so petty at some point.
Well, I mean, I think, the numbers were big on that because you had two really good teams, right? Two really big brands, two prominent coaches. You had Caitlin Clark, you had Angel Reese. I mean, there were a lot of reasons why people watched that game. It wasn't just because of Caitlin Clark. Otherwise, all of Caitlin's games would have been.
A lot of them were.
No, I know, but not to that degree.
My main point is, like, Caitlin Clark is doing so much better for the NBA, or the WNBA,
absolutely,
than any drawbacks. And so players, and I haven't spoken to a single WNBA player, but if WNBA players, I'm just judging them off of their actions, are jealous of her, think about the good that she's brought to the league. And I would say the same thing back in the 2000s about Tiger, because he, of course, got the media treatment. He still gets the media treatment, even though he's not great now. He still gets that. He's still a machine. And if the numbers weren't what they were, she wouldn't get this attention. If the Indiana Fever average attendance at home wasn't 4,000 more than the next one and 13,000 people more than the bottom of the league, they wouldn't be talking about this. But guess what? Her jersey sales are higher than some Cowboys. Her everything else that's going on is better because of Caitlin Clark.
Yeah. The only thing I want to see is, look, I got no problem with people or players playing Caitlin Clark hard, right?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
That's what this should be about, right?
Yeah.
Let's just take out the cheap stuff and let's not make everything about race or sexism or, who you love, all that stuff. Let's just play basketball and stop making all this more than what it needs to be.
100%. 100%. Real quick, I know we have already gone a little long and we're going to go 2 more minutes because I want to get a little bit of Cowboys in. You were at the Cowboys camp yesterday. You were there this week. I want you to just real quick give us 2-3 minutes, empty the notebook for us. What did you see? Who was there? Who was not there? What did Max say? Give us just a little bit of a synopsis here on that.
The sense I get is that Micah Parsons is going to do Micah Parsons, and that's okay because of the time of year that it is. I mean, the mandatory stuff he showed up for, but at the end of the day, some of this is brand building. Some of this is angling with Micah in terms of, trying to have a media presence while he's playing and then after while he's playing too. But man, I could sit there and listen to this guy talk 24/7. I mean, he's thoughtful. He's smart. You may not agree with what he has to say, but he knows what he's saying and why he's doing it. Like, this isn't anything he hasn't thought of. And I think it's going to be a fascinating year. I mean, it was also cool to kind of, meeting guys for the first time. Maris Leafau, the 3rd round pick from Notre Dame, super sharp kid, and obviously comes from a very, very talented family. And we're going to get into that in the days ahead. And then I got some Sam Williams stuff too that I think people are going to be curious to hear. I mean, I get the sense, Matthew, that if Sam Williams gets on the field and produces, this is going to be a guy that we want to stick a microphone in front of all the time.
I think it's really funny that you, my mom, and my sister are the only ones that call me Matthew.
I don't know. I just kind of feel like I'm
funny.
So much older than you. You just feel like Matthew to me. You look like a Matthew.
All right, Charles.
Especially with the glasses. That's fine too. And I don't know. Even my mom doesn't call me Charles, so that would be a one-off.
The other day I was looking at something on our website. and I saw Charles McGinnick as the byline, and I was just like, since when?
That's my
Since
pseudonym.
when?
So I always find that fascinating too. Whoever set up my page, so I have to go in and physically change it to Chuck. I don't know why it was set up, Charles, but it is. And some days I just don't feel like
I know,
changing
it's
it,
funny.
which is most days.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Cowboys on Monday. Obviously, there was a lot of NBA stuff I wanted to get to that I promised you on Monday that promised we would get to on Thursday. So for everyone who is still tuning in, I appreciate it. And that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. We'll get more into the Cowboys on Monday. We'll talk more about the NBA draft with Don back in. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We are dividing up these episodes on YouTube now, so where we'll have everything kind of segmented off. So if you only want to hear Caitlin Clark, you can only listen to the Caitlin Clark part. If you want to hear about the NBA draft, you can only listen to that part if you want. So make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us there as well. I'll tweet all of them out on my social medias. So we will be right back here on Monday. Everyone, until then, have a good week.